Thank you for your listening for my presentation. I get nervous, but I hope doing well when I present the information. The presentation talking about annotated biography. When I came here in United States, my planning to study how to change the strategy, also the skills, and how can you teach science for middle school in Saudi Arabia. There are some difficult rule about when you teach this level of student need some specific strategy and skills used, but my country need change this strategy to be better and to be like the modern country like the United States and British like that. That means I start to design my task about middle school. Basically, my curriculum design project involves teaching my students science based on technology and practical work involving problems, projects, and experiments. A good example for scientific exercise from my design task involves the student performing an experiment on velocity, motion, and impact using matchbox, car, and including plan. That means this is like the small design task about one subject using like the car fast. How can you change when you start and continue and stop, and how can you the student thinking how can use the matchbox and the landing plan to explain the concept of this subject. These are the idea for my design task, and I plan on grading my student based on proof on concept. I will apply this design for grade 8, 9 to 10 years student in Saudi Arabia at the Medina School. For this design task, I'm looking for many researcher and lecture review to get the idea how can realize this design task in my country. I create with Dr. K to help me about the report about how can you grade the student after to do this design task. And in studying about how to evaluate this design task, I went to the research literacy and found 25 sources, of which 15 were empirical and 10 were historical, but I will tell you about my 5 favorite sources that I find extremely impact and insightful for my research. The favorite one, I like this article, Reforming Primary Science Education. In this research, the author talking do this research in the primary education and founded some gap between the strategy the teacher using when you teach the student in the school. And after that, after analyze the data, he founded the highlights in the need for curriculum development in science education. According to the author, they must effective strategy in fostering change in the teachers' practice, including curriculum development, teacher reflection, educative curriculum materials, and cooperative partnership. About the AARE, it is that means the International Institute of Research in Education. That this research attend this conference and take like work in the group in the same area to get the information. The favorite two in the article review of research of vertical work in school science. Author, despite the confused in the bigger science education community regarding the definition of vertical work, it is suitable in science education as it encourages accurate description and observation, aroused and maintain interest, making phenomena more real, and performs reasoning and logical method of those. This research talking, it is a strong research design. I found it the details to help me to create the design task because the area doing this research, it is example from my country, and I found it many details. I can create it when I design the task. The favorite three, they need to, for having particular setting emphasized by author. In the article, designing effective activity center for drives learning by setting that activity center enable teacher. That means about this article talking about how can use the mini center in the school, like the minimum lab science, how the teacher using this lab to teach the student the certain subject of the courses, like when I teach from my country about the subject related to the science, I verbally talking and missing using this lab, but after when I read this research, I found it how can we use it, and like put it the many boxes and tell the student choose some toys from the box, and after that like the design task related the car and matchboxes and landing plan, and listen from the student about concept about what you're doing for these toys. After that I mentioned and the word good for student concept to encourage him to use it and to understand this design task. The favorite for Wail principal work and ICT in science education is important. Argumentation is equally fit. The article learning to teach argumentation, case study of peer self-secondary science teaching. This argumentation is a vital aspect of scientific inquiry as it plays a scientific role in the creation and justification of knowledge. Using this research, I learned from this research how to give the teacher training to like judgment with the student, like to the rule, to like how can you judgment when the student say something, give him some space to say and answer the question of coming from the student to understand better how can you do this subject in like the lab center or in the understanding the concept of motion and velocity. Favorite 5, this Arthur King presents a solution for students how find science classes boring and exam complex in their article, Project-Based Learning, inspiring middle school students to engage in deed of activity learning, and Arthur emphasized the importance of project-based learning to inspire students to engage in activity and deep learning in middle school science classes. Here in this research talking about using learning activity in the class, not like just listen for the lecture. He encouraged the student to using learning activity and cooperation in the class. Research question, the annotated biography gives background and the purpose of my research, which is explore how to inclusion of vertical work and technology in teaching science can improve my students' sufficiency, confidence and performance in not only physics but other science as well. This is some research question I will apply to using this research question to using in like the researcher, I read it not in the physics exactly, but you can in the mathematics and in the other related science, because the science in middle school, like the different subjects related to physics or chemistry and biology, they are, I need make the mix of research question and to help to use it in this area.
Mm-hmm.
You need...
Yeah, let's read those. Is there a need for curriculum development in middle school science education? What is the impact of practical work, that is, problems, project, and experiments on student confidence, performance, and self-sufficiency in middle school science classrooms? That's like you're here. And then what is the impact of technology-based science teaching on student confidence, performance, and self-sufficiency? Impact of technology, impact of practical work. What are some of the ways that educational institutions foster science education? What are some of the challenges facing science education in middle school and the solutions to these challenges? All right.
Continue the research question. What are some of the factors that influence how technology and practical work impact science education in middle school? After I read the research article and literacy review, I found some researchers talking about using technology and the benefit to use this technology in the school, in the middle school, to teach the science. Also, what are some of the solutions of challenges facing science education in middle school? How can teachers adjust their teaching practices and philosophy to incorporate practical work and technology into science education successfully? What are some of the ways of presentation the student can also to present experts or argue their scientific point? What trajectory should science education in middle school take? Hypothesis. My hypothesis of this research, particular phase, is particular based